My name is William Wu. I am in Global Environmental Health Section 1 with Professor Hooray in spring 2023. I will be looking at the 2006 Abidjan, Ivory Coast toxic waste dump. So the purpose and objectives of this video are to communicate information about the 2006 Abidjan, Ivory Coast toxic waste dump, and to also examine the health impacts resulting from exposure to toxic chemicals from the dump on both the local population and environment. I will also provide an overview and timeline of the cleanup process. So examining the table of contents, slide 1 will be an overview of the Abidjan waste dump. Slide 2 will be a breakdown of the waste dump contents. Slide 3 will examine the potential health effects from exposure to the toxic chemicals from the dump. Slide 4 will examine the frequency of symptoms from toxin exposure. Slide 5 will examine the impacts of the 2006 dump on Abidjan residents. Slide 6 will determine and examine the environmental impact. Slide 7 will be a brief timeline of the cleanup process, and Slide 8 will be a summary of events. As a brief overview of the 2006 Ivory Coast toxic waste dump, the dump occurred in Abidjan, which is a port city with a population of 4 million as of 2006 when the dump occurred. It is the largest city in the Ivory Coast and considered the economic capital of the country. So on August 20th, residents of Abidjan woke to a foul stench that was a resultant of an illegal dump that took place the night of August 19th, 2006. The company Trafigura that owned the ship, the Probo Koala, had paid $17,000 to a local company called Compagnie Tommy to illegally transport and dump untreated waste in dump sites throughout the city by a truck. There were at least 16 to 18 confirmed dump sites with around 500 tons of untreated waste in total dumped. The toxic waste content aboard the Probo Koala was a resultant of the caustic washing process that is used to remove corrosive and pungent sulfur compounds from low-quality crude oil, and in our case, unrefined gasoline called coke or naphtha. When we break down the exact contents of our waste dump, we find that around 74.45%, or 379 metric tons of the waste, is aqueous waste, 26.55%, or 137 metric tons, is hydrocarbon waste. Within the breakdown of our hydrocarbon waste, around 98% of the waste, or 134.3 metric tons, consisted of hydrocarbons C5 to C11, which includes our unsaturated compounds, normal alkanes, branch alkanes, cyclic alkanes, aromatics, amongst other trace chemicals. On the other hand, our breakdown of our aqueous waste reveals that around 10% of the waste is composed of sodium hydroxide, 6.8% is composed of total sulfur, 4.8% is composed of phenols, including cresols, 3.34% is composed of mercaptan sulfur, 0.5% is composed of inorganic sulfur, and 0.16% is composed of thiophenols. Our main chemicals for concern are sodium hydroxide, which is caustic soda, hydrogen sulfide, mercaptans, phenols, and hydrocarbons in general, as these may be harmful to both the human body and the surrounding environment. It is important to note that there was also sediment waste purportedly discovered, but this is unconfirmed. In examining the potential health effects and impacts from exposure to toxic chemicals from the illegal dump, specifically the aforementioned sodium hydroxide, hydrogen sulfides, mercaptans, phenols, and hydrocarbons, there were a variety of exposure routes that could have occurred. So residents reported foul stenches and likely inhaled aerosols produced by the chemicals within the dump. They may have also consumed water or food contaminated from the dump, or may have been exposed through direct dermal contact with toxic waste. This exposure resulted in a varying of neurological symptoms, ENT pulmonary-related symptoms, gastrointestinal symptoms, cutaneous symptoms, ocular symptoms, as well as rare cardiovascular and gynecological symptoms. In observing the frequency of symptoms from toxin exposure, symptoms that were commonly discovered in the 98,108 patient health consultations associated with the dump were general and neurological symptoms at 73.4% or 72,062 occurrences, ENT or pulmonary symptoms at 68.1% or 66,853 cases, digestive symptoms at 55.9% or 54,845 cases, cutaneous symptoms at 28.5% or 27,999 cases, and ocular symptoms at 17.7% or 17,350 cases. This reported data coincides with the most common reported symptoms from residents: stinging of the eyes, headaches, dizziness, dyspnea, coughs, severe itching, bloating, nausea, vomiting, and dysphagia. In observing the impacts of the 2006 dump on Abidjan residents, following the government's decision to provide free health services related to potential exposures on August 24, 2006, there was a small increase in the number of health consultations in Abidjan health facilities. While the initial rise in consultation numbers is small, only varying from 56 consultations on August 25, 2006, and 376 consultations on September 5, 2006, as the health impacts from exposure and associated fear within the community became more apparent, this number would exponentially increase to 2,798 health consultations by the 8th of September, and increase even more between the dates of September 10th, 2006 and September 15th, 2006, from 822 to 6,831 health consultations. By the end of the emergency medical response period in October 2006, there were at least a reported 10 to 17 deaths, at least 69 hospitalizations, and a total of 107,000 consultations related to toxin exposure. In addition to the aforementioned human health ramifications, the 2006 Ivory Coast toxic waste disaster also impacted the local environment. As liquid from the dump seeped out or combined with rainwater, the surrounding soil and potential drinking water sources would have been contaminated. Additionally, animals that drink or eat from contaminated sources would have impacted the surrounding food chain. Furthermore, fumes and vapors from the dump damage and pollute the surrounding air, and seepage from toxins from the dump sites negatively impact the coastal aquatic environments. After the risks to the environment and human health becomes evident, a necessity of a cleanup is apparent. 4 weeks after the initial toxic waste dumping on September 14, 2006, the French company Tredi is contracted by the Ivorian government to clean up dump sites across Abidjan. On February 17, 2007, Trafigura reaches a settlement with the Ivorian government to pay $190 million in damages related to the spill. This indirectly results in the March 2007 ceasing of Tredi cleanup efforts. This is then followed by the contracting of Biogenie in September 2007 to begin the cleanup process of biodegradation. However, despite these efforts, the UN expresses its concern in August of 2008 over cleanup delays as residents continue to report foul stenches and health complications. In summary, the company Trafigura dumped toxic waste that resulted from the caustic washing process aboard the Probo Koala in various dump sites across Abidjan via truck on August 19, 2006. The toxic waste that consisted of aqueous and hydrocarbon waste had numerous environmental and health impacts, and cleanup efforts have generally failed the local population. While Trafigura has maintained its stance that the spill has not had extensive health impacts or environmental impacts, there have been criminal charges and long-lasting environmental and human health impacts from toxin exposure seen in Abidjan. Finally, Trafigura has settled an out-of-court sum of $50 million to be paid to victims in the Ivory Coast suffering from injuries related to the toxic waste. As you can see, this is a list of my references, and thank you for listening.